Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Beyond the Wire podcast. I am your host, Tim Keller. Along with me, as he always is Mr. Matt Disher. How are you this week, sir?
It's another rainy day in Cincinnati, Ohio, Tim. We went for July and August and it didn't rain once, and now it's been raining every single day. My son is upset because there's no baseball practice.
Yeah, he's a big baseball player. I know that.
Yeah. So baseball is out the window when it's all soggy outside. Otherwise, everything's good here. What's new in your world?
Not much is new in my world. I will say this. Today we had a new hire. Well, he started on Monday, but his education finally got loaded up into the system. So I was helping the young man get logged onto the system so he could start his education process. And so we have, everything's password protected. So he has to call a number, enter some information in to get, they'll spit out a generic password for him, which he can use to log into the system and then set his own. Well, one of the bits of information they need was a date of birth. So he has the speakerphone going. He's entering the information. The system kicks back. You said September whatever, 2002. Is this correct? And he hits one for correct. And I just sat there 3 feet away from him going, oh, my God, he was born in 2002. For that moment, I'm like, man, I'm I know he's 19. It really,
but you're like 19-year-olds were born in 1990.
It took
right?
It took my breath away for a minute,
yeah.
And I go, I'm not 19 anymore. I'm old. So yeah, that's other than that, it's then back to the normal routine, back from vacation, getting into the flow of work. But yeah, that one hurt me for a bit. Took my breath away for a couple seconds, and it hurt. But yeah, other than that though, we have a great episode lined up for you. We have Mr. Bart Cole returning as a guest this week. You can, if you're watching, you see his backdrop there. He's got the United States Marine Corps Fox Company Raiders flag. Well, 2-1. Matt actually just bought the hoodie recently. Is that correct?
I just got the same hoodie. I'm just so glad that Bart has the flag up there. I wanted to buy the flag and fly it on my flagpole out of my driveway, and I probably still will. It was just it was a cost thing. I was like, I can get away with getting the sweatshirt, and my wife won't care. But if I get the sweatshirt and the flag, she's like, what did you spend $100 on it? Paid to raid is the site. So, yeah. So, Bart, you said that you went in there and started badgering them to put up the Fox Company 2-1 stuff because it hasn't been in there for as long as I've been aware of that site.
Yeah, it was probably a year ago. I was made aware of the site by working with some guys from 1-4 and Alpha Company, I believe. And then they ended up hitting me up, and I was talking back and forth, and they're friends with some people on the site. And I'm like, dude, I just popped a few emails over, and I was talking to the people that they were in contact with. I'm like, I know it's old, but help us out. And eventually I checked back in, and there it was. So I've had that for a while now. And yeah, I'm just appreciative that they have that. I think I even got a sticker somewhere.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'll show it to you later, Matt.
Do they make a 2-1 sticker also?
Yeah, they do. They have the Fox Company Raiders 2-1. Dude, this is awesome. I'm going to move this so you can see it. See it right there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's on their site?
That's on their site.
So it's paid to raid. Yep. I'm going to go.
See the monkey fist below it?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I'd actually never heard of that site. I have to check that site out. Sounds like a lot of fun.
I sent them a picture. I took this is back 100 years ago when we were doing raids in Southern California. I took a picture with a disposable camera off the side of a Zodiac before I almost fell out of the Zodiac because we were skipping across the ocean, and I decided to take my hands off the gunnels and try to get a picture so I could be like, take it back home for my photo album. Because you don't get any really good photos when you're out on the water. You're all painted up and, you got all the cool stuff going on. I'll share a picture of Bart and I all painted up in our Mustang suits that I have on Facebook. But I tried to snap a picture of that and I sent it to them. And it probably was one of the worst pictures they've ever received from anybody. Because I was like, you put this on your website. You got these pictures, dudes are taking helmet cam, hot, 4K video from the side of boats now. And here I am taking this grainy picture of us 100 years ago
with a disposable camera.
Yeah. With a disposable camera. It's the only picture I have too.
Matt, I have a very similar picture. I was spy rigging in 29 Palms So you're hanging off the bottom of the helicopter, you're supposed to keep both your arms out. If everybody that's hanging keeps their arms out, the line stays in one position. The second somebody drops an arm, everybody's spinning. You're going down the toilet bowl. Well, in my gear, I snuck a disposable camera in, got on, hooked up to the line. We took off, and I was like, I'm getting a picture while I'm up here. So I have a picture where you see 3 or 4 people dangling below me. I had the hardest time getting my camera back in because we had started to spin. Everybody else in the line was a little mad at me, but hey, I got the picture I wanted. It's just a blurry from a disposable camera. It's nothing but sand below me. You see like 2 heads in sand.
I'm always so upset. Like when I look at some of my buddies who were in the military after I was in, like with the advent of like really good digital cameras and then of course GoPros. And I'm so jealous that, I mean, all the things we did that I wish I just had some like helmet cam footage of, or some video, like even a couple minutes. And for anybody with whom I served, I always had cameras with me. I always carried a video camera around, or I carried it in my backpack or something like that. Tons of footage. For some reason, half of it is just static now. You can't see any of it. I had footage of, we were passing through the, I forget which straits it is. You're Egypt on one side and Saudi Arabia on the other side. What's that strait? The strait's called there.
Hormuz would be with where Iran's at.
Maybe it was that. We were anyway, 19-year-old kid. I don't remember, but we were passing through, and I like, hey, look, you can see Africa on one side of the ship and Asia on the other side of the ship. And I just thought that was so cool. I'm looking at 2 continents effectively, but I thought it was Egypt. I can't remember. I wish I had that footage.
Straits of Tehran.
Maybe that's what it is. I'm gonna have to.
I typed in Egypt Strait real quick, and that's what popped up. So
yeah, it could be. But it was, such a cool experience just to have that kind of stuff. I mean, let alone all of the operational stuff we were doing, on the back of Zodiacs and things like that. He's looking at his map. He's like, we're gonna get to the bottom of this.
So up here was where we went through, and the Straits of Hormuz, I believe, and then down here we're by, we had the Horn of Africa that were through the Gulf of Aden.
Gulf of Aden, maybe that's what it was, or maybe I was just mistaken.
That's where we went through because we hit both sides, and on that trip in 2001, and Yemen was where the USS Cole had been blown up the point before us.
Yep. Yeah.
And we went through there, and you could see Africa on one side, and the Middle East there on the other side.
Yeah.
Look at that. Geography lessons here on the Beyond the Wire podcast.
Geography lessons by Bart Cole.
Yeah.
And he's like, let me tell you a little bit about the Straits of Hormuz back in the 1500s.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get history, geography. It's all rolled into one. It's fantastic.
Right.
What you won't get is a fashion class, but we're going to talk about fashion right now because the Space Force has finally unveiled its new sci-fi worthy dress uniforms. I'll see if I have a picture. I thought I saved a picture there.
I can't wait.
The sci-fi space uniforms. It is a dark blue jacket with buttons going down your right shoulder, so the right side. It is
somebody on Facebook shared a picture of one of the Space Force uniforms, and then they put a bellhop from a hotel right next to him. It's the same uniform.
Oh man!
All I can think of is Starfleet. You know what I mean?
That's what it looks like.
That's very much what it looks like. It says that the U.S. military's newest service unveiled its prototype dress uniform at the Air Force Association's Air, Space, and Cyber Conference in National Harbor, Maryland. It says that the uniform is marked a marked departure from the dress blues of the Air Force. It has a dark navy coat that buttons on the right-hand side, unlike the Air Force coat that buttons down the middle. The insignia that they have these individuals wearing, it does kind of look like a bellhop uniform now that I've gone down further into the article there. I don't know. I think it's pretty sharp. I do like their little insignia right above their ribbons. So that's a lot of fun. But I also wanted to bring up that they unveiled their rank insignias as well.
Yeah.
So it's a lot like the Air Force, just flipped upside down. So you have your chevrons going downwards. So it's more like V's with the rockers going over the top.
Yep.
I will say though that in the middle, if you've ever watched Star Trek, they had that thing on their chest that they could touch and talk to. somebody on the bridge or somebody, in engineering. There's a little triangular looking Star Trek thing. I mean,
it's like a delta. Yeah, it's like a delta or something, I think is what it's called.
It very much reminds me of a very Star Trek modeled emblem. That's for sure.
It is dress uniforms, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the dress uniforms, and they did the insignia.
Are their utilities going to be the spandex ones from Star Trek Next Generation?
I sure hope so.
Just in bodysuits, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. There's going to they're going to have like the yellow shirt guys and the red shirt guys. Which shirts in Star Trek? Which were the ones that always got killed?
The red shirts.
The red shirts. So those will be the the Lance Corporals or whatever the brand. I don't know what that is in the Air Force or in the Space Force rather. The Guardian First Class. I don't know their ranks, quite honestly. And that was a lesson in the Marine Corps. We had to learn the Marine Corps ranks, which are very similar, not the same, but they're very similar to the Army. But then in the Marines, we had to learn the Navy ranks, and that was always very confusing to me. I'm like, you're telling us to learn two totally different ranks. Now as a 40-year-old man, I look back and it was just me being an 18-year-old kid complaining, but it's useful in my job these days.
Hey, Tim, just so you know, you're on mute.
Thank you. You do know that they are shoving a whole lot of information at you over the 3-month period in between, running and jumping and crawling through mud and, all that stuff in boot camp. It does seem like a lot at the time, but yes, it is also, I'm 18. I can't, I don't want to do this no more.
Right.
My article's not pulling up. I had the rank insignia article pulled up as well. Was going to go over some of those, but we'll just move on to the next article. And kind of funny, very scary, honestly. Chaos and drama. New report sheds light on what went wrong aboard the Navy's COVID-stricken carrier. So the Navy had, the Theodore Roosevelt, the aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt recently had a COVID-19 outbreak upon the ship. So the Navy did not know how to deal with an escalating pandemic and conflicting information. So apparently the chain of command was bewildered as the captain was Bradley Martin, one of the authors of Rand Corp. So apparently once the outbreak started, there was no mass casualty plan in place, which, Matt, you brought up before we started recording. This seems like something that, we just assumed would have been done.
Well, pretty standard stuff. I mean, again, I'm not the captain of an aircraft carrier, nor am I the person that plans for aircraft carrier. But I distinctly remember, at least for those of us on the ground, our part of our protocol was that we had like mop gear and stuff. And now we never talked about what happens if one person gets sick and we got to separate ourselves from everybody else. But we always had contingencies for dealing with bioweapons and chemical weapons and things like that, and that was like suit up. And if you're in your mask and you start you've been exposed to whatever it is you've been exposed to and you start vomiting and getting sick, like you're just gonna have to deal with it. Or you can take the 2-PAM chloride or something like that. You can take the EpiPen shots and the different stuff that they had in the kits. But this is, if you read this article, it talks about there was a little bit of contingency around what happens if the flu gets on the ship or one person gets sick. But it sounds to me, and this has been my experience with COVID, even when I had COVID, a lot of the anxiety about being sick was based on everything that I had seen in the news and on the media. Like I was afraid that it was going to get much, much worse. Statistically, it will not. Statistically, it does not. But I think that, and I'm wondering if part of the unfolding of chaos on that ship was because they had been told this thing is really serious and, everybody be scared. So they said that they parked in Guam and spent a big significant portion of their deployment
they
in
were
Guam.
Gone from January to July. And they said they spent about a third of that trip.
Yeah.
Just kind of docked in Guam. They moved individuals, I'm assuming non-COVID positive individuals, off the ship and into hotels and things of that nature while the ship was disinfected, which, by the way, to disinfect an entire aircraft carrier,
right?
Good Lord. The commanding officer of the ship was relieved of duty as well.
So I have a question. Does it say if anybody died on that?
One person did.
Yeah, one person died.
Okay. So I think that you have to make hard decisions and stuff like that. So it's still underneath a 1% casualty rate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they would have just holed up and went to a herd,
immunity,
that could have benefited them as opposed to continue to roll it out and continue to make it more and more of a problem. Of course, hindsight's 2020, but they could have lost somebody, statistically from a heart attack during the same time.
Right.
So,
or an accident.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. Any time that you are in the water and you're doing anything in the water, it's a real world scenario. It can't just be a training thing because water kills.
Right.
And that's just kind of odd to me that it lasted so long. And I think that sometimes there's a bit of a risk avoidance with some of this stuff because of the optics of it.
Well, the article states that one of the major factors that drove the muddled response was the inability to get clear guidance to the ship from higher up in the Navy about how best to tackle the outbreak. And then it was a systematic breakdown in which the theater response appeared inadequate to the ship's commanding officer.
This was very early on, too.
Yeah,
this was very early on in COVID.
The commanding officer is reaching out to his superiors saying, it's new to everybody. So what the hell, what the hell do you want me to do here? Mm-hmm. Do we continue on and just possibly go for herd immunity and hope we don't have any casualties? Do you want me to, find the next available, port to dock in and sit and wait it out? What do we do? It seems that maybe that communication wasn't getting back to him quick enough. He was dragging his feet. Like Matt says, it's better to, make a decision and just move than just to stay in one place. At least do something. If it's the wrong thing, at least you've done something.
Well, and beyond that, think about the amazing, the weight of responsibility on your shoulders as the commander, as the captain of an aircraft carrier. You are one of a few aircraft carriers that's out there in the world projecting naval power. And now you're faced with this problem. There's not clear guidance. I mean, communication is number one. If there's not clear guidance coming from command, like how do we handle this? Do we just park the ship and stop being combat effective? Or do we keep rolling? And that's at this point, you remember in the beginning of this thing, we locked down. I remember thinking to myself and having a conversation with my wife, they're not actually going to close schools. Like it's the same as the flu, a bad flu season where they're like, well, we're not going to close schools. I didn't think they'd actually close schools, and we shut down everything in March of 2020. And this was right in the middle of that. They deployed in January 2020, right? So they were right in the beginning of the COVID outbreak or the COVID the COVID pandemic, I guess. And there's not clear guidance at this point. And up to this point, they were probably being told that this is going to kill everybody. And it's a super dangerous thing. And statistically, it's not dangerous to probably the people on that ship in that age group.
Well, obviously, I mean, it was dangerous to at least one person.
Right.
Sadly, there was a loss.
Right. Yeah. And I just mean, when I say statistically, I mean, again, statistically, they were largely going to be fine. To Bart's point, somebody could die from a heart attack or an accident on a ship, and it does happen all the time. Not discounting, but it is. What do you do as a captain of a ship, of an aircraft carrier, where you are faced with two scenarios or two situations? You either park the ship and be out of the fight, or you just continue moving and be combat effective, but people continue to operate on a daily fashion.
That's what one of the paragraphs here in the article talks about. The report highlights competing interests on the ship as the medical chain of command was focused on how to treat the outbreak itself, while the remaining rest of the chain of command was more focused on the operation and the mission.
Right.
And we might have a wound on our leg, but we still have another leg we can use. Let's keep moving.
And there's a little bit of talk in there about like strict isolation. I don't know, for anybody who's never been on a ship, it's virtually impossible to isolate people on a ship. You can't. You're sleeping on top of each other. I'm pretty sure that Bart Cole and I were in the same, 8 foot by 8 foot section with 6 other dudes for the entirety of our deployment.
Nice. And this isn't
how each other smell.
Yeah.
Matt's
coming. I can smell him.
I can't. Good thing is that after COVID, I can't smell. So
you still?
So I should go on a deployment now.
There you go. Yeah. Actually, like Matt said, they do talk in the article about how they do have an idea of what they want to do if something like the flu comes in contact with ship members. But this isn't the first time there's been an outbreak on a naval ship, as a matter of fact. Bart Cole was not part of an outbreak on a naval ship years ago, but he was a witness to, what happens when there's an outbreak. He just got to see from a distance at an arm's length, maybe even longer.
It was a lot longer than arm's length.
But Bart, let's talk about your experience a little bit.
So I forget what part of the ocean, which ocean we were deployed to at the time, but we had a ship's platoon, and we'd send certain numbers of Marines there, and they would help with things around the ship to while we were, at sea and underway, just cleaning up the ship. They would do some paint work, some light construction.
That's who disinfected the aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt, probably.
Yep. Yeah, right. So, and they would do this. So there was one of our Marines from our platoon had been, detached from us and assigned to the ship's platoon. So anyway, I noticed that some of these guys were carrying their mattresses and their belongings to the aft portion of the ship one day, and I didn't know what was going on, and I thought, well, maybe it was like just a cleansing thing, like a field day type thing, because they lived in their own little area. So no, what happened is they had them throw everything overboard, all their personal belongings, their clothing, and their mattresses, and then they had them stripped down, and they threw everything overboard, and they started delousing them with the louse powder, because they had crabs had been infested in the ship's platoon.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God. And then later on, you watch, what is it? Super Troopers, where the guy gets the sugar powder.
The powdered sugar is delicious.
So anyway, you see that and you're like, oh my God. And then they had to fumigate the berthing area that they were in. So they kept them all on the fantail until, the chemicals wore off or whatever. And they issued them out new coveralls. So the Marines were wearing Navy coveralls until we could get back into a port and cross-deck some stuff for them. They were pretty upset, but I don't know. They were kind of some dirty butts too. So,
so no extreme isolation for them. It was, or were they isolated? They had to sleep on the flight deck. That would have been kind of cool.
I don't remember if they slept there, but I do remember like you weren't to talk to them or to get close to them, because when I saw them, I think it was initially they shut down some of the catwalk or ladder well areas, and they just had them filing through. And I mean, in my mind now, I can think like there was probably someone spraying behind them or something. That probably didn't happen that way. But you weren't allowed to. It was kind of hush hush. And then when it got out that it was all over body crabs, it was pretty gross.
Well,
but do that so it didn't affect the rest of the ship.
Yes, they have to take those sort of drastic measures to make sure no one else outside of this small group, becomes, air quotes here, contaminated. So like Matt said earlier, it was Matt, Bart, and roughly 6 other dudes in an 8 foot by 8 foot space. So imagine it wouldn't take much that if, the 3 of us and 5 other individuals were in an 8 foot by 8 foot space, and one of those individuals brought something like that back, it's probably going to hop around pretty quickly to the rest of us, without any actual contact, just because of how much bedding and clothing and stuff is all in that area. So imagine being one of those individuals that, honest to God, had nothing to do with this. And just because other people he was in the same berthing area with.
Oh, yeah.
I
gotta call home and explain this to my family.
Yeah, like, hon, I'm not coming back with that camcorder I left here with, and I don't have any photos anymore. So could you send me more? Like, that'd be terrible.
This is so. I mean, if you've ever been on a cruise, so I went on my first and only cruise just before, about a year before the COVID outbreak, and every time you go to eat or do anything, you have to wash your hands and sanitize. I wonder, how they keep that sort of outbreak from happening on a ship. This outbreak that we're talking about, that Bart's talking about, like, how does one person not bring it onto a cruise ship and pass it around? But secondly, as I was thinking about that, then I'm like, well, how does the Navy not have a protocol based on what cruise ships do to try to contain illnesses? Because cruise ships, you've seen this on the news, cruise ships have outbreaks of
Legionnaire's disease.
Digestive things. And I know I went on a Disney cruise, and everywhere we went, every door we'd walk into, somebody would be squirting hand sanitizer on our hands. So, I mean, the crew is like very effective in that regard. But It doesn't stop us from breathing on each other. You'd think that, I don't know, maybe there was a lesson there. And of course, here I am as a layman telling the Navy what they should be doing based on my Disney cruise. But that's why we're here. We're experts, right?
All right, hear me out. We need Mickey Mouse on every boat.
Goofy, first mate.
Yeah,
it's going to work exactly the same.
Yeah, we need to put water slides. I don't know. Yeah, that would be
not a bad idea, Tim. That's not a bad idea. You know, talk about if the Navy needs to meet its recruiting quotas.
Yeah,
water slides,
some water slides on there.
Right, make it fun.
Yeah. Oh my. So.
That
Yeah, that's
you could go through the water slide and it could just be a hand sanitizer.
Right. And then anything and everything on your body is it's kind of like when you show up to boot camp and they put like 4,000 shots of different stuff into
you. Yeah.
All of the meaty parts of your body. Yeah. So everybody's limping around and your arms don't work. And that was fun, but it was basically like a water slide of shots and you have no idea what you're getting, by the way.
No.
They tell you it's all good for you, but like I said last week, you wake up the next day and whichever side you took the buttock shot in, that leg doesn't want to work. It takes 30 seconds to catch up to the rest of you.
Right.
Like, oh, there it is. Got it. Now my leg works again.
Jump out of your top rack and you just crash to the ground because your leg doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So the last article we're going to talk about today is about General Miley. So there was an article, we wanted to bring it up last week. This is the article at the end of the episode I mentioned, we wanted to spend some time on this, so we didn't really have the time to do it last week. So we're bringing it up now. But General Miley was fearful of Donald Trump's actions in his final weeks as president. So the U.S.'s top military officer twice assured Chinese counterparts that the two nations would not go to war. This wasn't, I would say, big news, but I kept seeing or hearing things via social media and certain news outlets that there was thought that, now that Trump has officially lost, he's just going to go off and do something completely nuts and, throw us right back into another war. And so a lot of people were putting that country as China. So General Miley is apparently reaching out to Chinese military members, letting them know we have no thoughts of going to war with you, going as far to say, and this is, from the article, that he would give them a heads up if an attack were to be planned and happen. I have mixed feelings about this. I don't necessarily want to see this country go to war with anybody, let alone China. But we cannot have people in places of power like this gentleman is alerting or saying he'll alert our potential enemies if we decide we're going to strike and attack.
I'm having a hard time with the whole story because I realize I am very much, I guess how the information has been presented, I'm having a hard time with that because I'm very well aware that social media, for example, and news stations, they will twist and turn media and stories to be whatever they need it to be. And of course, people on social media put things up that, they add fake context to it or dramatic context. My biggest question, as I've read into it, is, was this within his scope of duties? Was this legal? Was it within his scope of duties? Is that what this job is supposed to do? And if the answer is yes, then, and that's based on precedent, this is what a Joint Chiefs chairman would do, or an advisor in this capacity would do, then okay. But I don't have enough historical reference to what it would be. But to your point, Tim, if we were locking eyes with a potential opponent and the commander in chief was going to issue orders to go to conflict with that entity, would it be prudent to go warn them? I mean, I realize the media does it all the time. Like, hey, 10 bombers just took off from Andrews Air Force Base. That happened before shock and awe. Like, Iraq knew we were coming,
Yeah.
Wasn't a surprise. But in this case, was his intention to say, hey, we're good, we don't have a problem here? Or was it to say, if there is a problem, I'm going to tell you first? I don't know.
I think there might have been some of that. Go ahead, Bart.
So this general is no General Joe Dunford, who had that position previously. He doesn't have the military bearing, I don't believe, and obviously the presence. He is out of rags already if you look at him. So immediately you think, how did you get this position? And then I look at there's two parts of this that we're talking about. There's the hey, assuring somebody that we're not going to attack, okay, which I agree with. I mean, I think that generals do that, and they need to have personal relations until a wartime setting with other countries. I think it's smart, and it's a way to alleviate going to war because that is like the very end of our diplomacy.
Mm-hmm.
But assuring somebody that, well, if we decide to go to war, I'm going to give you a heads up so you can hide your people or maybe do a first attack on us. I think that really dives headfirst into the realm of treasonous. And I think that there's a lack of leadership there, and he's proven it time and time again through his voicing of some of these woke policies. And I think that it's really sad, and I wish that other people would see that and probably replace him with a more competent leader that is somebody you can look at and have faith in. Right now,
well,
speaking to these other people that are still in, they don't have faith in that man.
Mm-hmm. So reportedly, General Miley called General Li Zuchen, hope I'm getting that right, which essentially holds the same office as General Miley here in the United States. It's the People's Libertarian Army, whatever they call that position. It's essentially the same thing as the Joint Chief of Staffs. But the first call was October 30th. It was 4 or 5 days before the election. The second call took place 2 days after the Capitol riots happened. So with
protests.
Yes. Okay. The Capitol protests. The first time in recent history that something, like that took place in our capital, at least to that extent. There were people questioning what was getting ready to happen in this country. So I think there's part of that you want to. Bart brought it up. You have to be diplomatic. You have to have these relationships with people, in positions of power that could be potential enemies to try to make sure we don't get to that point. I don't think you shouldn't be making any sort of promises though. Go out there, dip your toes in the water, see what the temperature is, get a feel for the situation possibly, and just let them know, like, we are not in any way, shape, or form prepping or wanting to get into some sort of altercation with you, and just see what sort of information you start getting back, because you don't want, especially a country like China, to think, we think America's going to do something, so we'll just go ahead and, we'll do it first. We'll be the first one to throw the punch. Because, if a country of that stature decided to throw a punch, I think we all know that we'd probably punch back.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if you look at the optics of this? If you had, say, a lieutenant that had gone to school, maybe here in the States,
mm-hmm.
with some Chinese foreign national, and they have parallel careers in China and in America, and that lieutenant reaches out to his friend and says, "Hey, I'm with Cyber Warfare Command or whatever. If our country decides to go to war with you, I'm going to reach out and tell you so you can tell your people that we're going to go." That is a treasonous event.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the optics of it, I think that you have like a rule of law that still applies to your higher leadership. And what's good for the goose is good for the gander at this point also.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I did a little bit of digging, and was on Twitter finding some people talking about this. So you brought up the treason, Bart. Some other things under the UCMJ that General Miley could possibly be looking at if somebody decided to take it there. Article 81 is conspiracy. Article 104 is aiding the enemy. Article 132, frauds against the U.S. And then 133, conduct unbecoming. These are all potential punishments that somebody, this guy's supposed to be, top of the food chain essentially when it comes to the military, and he's out here sharing information.
He's ate his way there, you can tell.
Yeah.
Well, this is the other thing on a broader scale that I've seen in recent. I mean, we're talking about now a month or so of of a couple of mishaps by, involving the military. To include a couple episodes ago, we were talking about the kind of a botched pullout in Afghanistan. All this stuff keeps disappearing from the news. We're not talking about Afghanistan anymore, and it's a month later. We're not talking about that at all. We're not talking about the subject right now with the general. We're not talking about that either. It was on military.com. It's a story that if you're in the military or paying attention to the military networks, you're seeing these stories, but these were top headlines a couple of weeks ago, and then they've just sort of disappeared. And that's what's more concerning to me, is that there's not a resolution to these things. Well, what's happening with the general now? Mm-hmm. Is it just, hey, no, you know what? It was fine. And everybody decided, no, it's okay. And we're just we don't care anymore. Is there an investigation going into what's going on in Afghanistan? Is there, the other big topic right now is that the military could potentially be kicking out people that are not vaccinated. Mm-hmm. So that becomes another political issue where the military's manpower numbers, maybe they're trying to shrink a little bit, but at the same time, you're going to lose a lot of people if you institute that policy, or if that policy is carried out. That's going to be kind of an ugly thing. But we're not talking about these things are not on the lips of the decision makers right now. I'm looking at CNN on my other screen. I don't see anything talking about that either. Not that I frequent CNN, but I like to look at all of the channels and kind of see what we're discussing here. And these big hot button issues are just not there right now. So that's just another concerning thing to me when I look around. I'm like, why aren't we having this conversation? Why is there no debate on it?
Absolutely. You want to talk about some news that got swept under the rug? I just got reminded just the other day, August 10th was 2 years since Mr. Epstein killed himself. Yeah. Since he killed himself in prison. That's what we'll go with. I couldn't tell you. Did they ever figure out what exactly happened? What happened to those two guys that were supposedly watching him that night? I have no idea.
There was all kinds of testimony. Again, it's another thing that just sort of disappeared. It's these things that you stop hearing about them.
It's here 1 minute, gone the next.
Yeah, and this is the other thing. I've always said this about media, all of the media too, is that the headline is what sells. And even if the headline is incorrect, which they do sometimes, the headline can be incorrect, the story could be incorrect or incomplete. They will never come back and change their story and say, hey, our bad, we messed this. I shouldn't say that. They do sometimes do that.
It's in the very back page, though, a little tiny paragraph.
Right. So you have 1 million people that see the initial headline, and they're like, oh, my gosh, now I think, Bart Cole has a tail that looks like a dog's tail. Oh, 1 million people see Bart Cole has a tail. And then they're like, oh, actually, that's a mistake. Bart Cole had something hanging off the side of his chair, and it looked like a tail, but we're putting it on the back page. And now 50,000 people see the redaction or the retraction, I guess. That's what always blew my mind. So you see these headlines. The headlines are, I'm looking at it right now. Biden says we're not seeking a new Cold War with China. Okay, what is there a Cold War? Is there a Cold War coming? We're not going to see anything else about that. It's the blood that sells. It's the dramatics that sell, and then you never hear anything else about them, and nobody explains anything. And it's doing a disservice to us in terms of how we receive information. And that is, social media is the worst for that. I
think that the news cycle has become more of like drama TV.
It is.
You watch Law and Order. They have to keep pumping out new and more dramatic episodes to keep the people coming. Well, I've already seen the one where, the gyre got, mugged running through the park.
Right.
They can't keep doing mugger, in the park stories. They have to. Oh, now this mugger also has COVID.
And a tail.
You got mugged and you got COVID, and he hit you with his tail.
And crabs.
Well, so the news cycle now is, okay, we need to beat that last headline. This headline got us a lot of eyes. Let's get a new one in here. What's that?
I have seen, so recently we saw the Gabby Petito thing. This is not related to the military at all. The Gabby Petito stories, the girl that went missing out west with her boyfriend or fiance, and he came back home to Florida, and then she was reported missing 10 days after he returned, and now he's missing. They found her body. There is some pushback, again, among social media right now, and this is valid pushback. This is a fair argument. People are saying, why is this such a big story? And a lot of it is, why is it that when a white girl disappears, it becomes a big story? And that's one of the news stories that I saw. And I'm like, valid argument. it's not, I don't think it's the media consumers' fault that these stories get pushed to the front. I think it's the media's fault that it gets pushed to the front. It's not us who are like, I wouldn't know about Gabby Petito unless the media fed it to me for 6 or 8 days. And frankly, although it's a tragic story, and I feel bad for this family, and I feel bad, and I hope that the guy is caught. But at the same time, like, if I didn't know about it, it wouldn't have mattered to me. And it's still just it's a news story from which I'm removed. I don't know these people. I don't. It's just like when celebrity news comes up and some celebrity has an accident or dies. I'm kind of like, I know it sounds callous, but I don't know that person. Do I care? But it's being spoon fed to me. And
it's kind of like when comedians talk about, like, and they make jokes about like other comedians or Hollywood, and you're just like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, how does that affect my life? But when you're talking about like Gabby and stuff, like it's being, this young lady that goes missing and stuff and ends up murdered, it looks like, who's talking about our Native Americans, that are going, they're being lost by the thousands, and like our border stuff where Lord knows how many innocents have been killed, died of other means, whatever, dehydration, whatever. They're missing. They have no names on these Jane Does, and it's across the country too.
Thousands at a time.
Yeah, we've got young black families. They have a young lady that goes missing.
Right.
You don't hear
nothing.
anything.
Crickets. Yeah. The media, local media, doesn't do a story on it.
No,
and that's the point. That's exactly the point.
I know what you're trying to get to. Yeah.
Yeah. These people are frustrated, and they're like, "Why do I care? Why is America bending over backwards to hear about this girl?" And, again, I'm not taking anything away from the situation. All of these are tragic. When somebody disappears and there's a mystery to be solved, it's all tragic. It's frightening. However, I would argue that it's not the consumer's fault. I mean, the media sells us what we're going to click on, right? So if that's what they're selling us, but here's the thing: the media could probably make a story about pepperoni pizza, pepperoni's not being enough on the pizza, you know what I mean? And if they put it on every channel and they force everybody to click on it, well, of course that's going to become big news because it's everywhere. Yeah. So it's a valid argument to Bart's point. You've got all these other people in America that suffer and go missing or are engaged in or victims of violence, and nobody's talking about it.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite comedians of all time, Patrice O'Neill, had a comedy bit about this same topic. He talked about Jordan Vander Sloot. You guys remember him?
Yeah.
Okay, so he supposedly had murdered and tried to hide the body of Natalie Holloway.
Mm-hmm.
White American tourist. It became big news over here. I don't know if she was a Midwestern girl or what, but seemed like an all-American girl, Caucasian, big news. A few years later, Jordan Vander Sloot finally gets arrested because he had killed Stephanie Ramirez, a Hispanic woman. Now, thank God they finally caught the guy.
Right.
But if I wouldn't have looked up the article, I wouldn't have been able to even tell you her name, honest to God. But the comedian lets it go. He's like, hey, remember this Jordan Vander Sloot guy? He turned out to be a murderer. He goes, what's that girl he killed over there and whatever? And somebody in the audience yelled out, Natalie Holloway, immediately. Boom.
Right.
And he goes, but what was that girl's name he got in Peru? What was exactly?
Right.
And he goes, don't get mad at me. It's the truth.
This is a thing. Know. It's called missing white woman syndrome. And there are all these news articles on it. I would encourage people to read it because what frustrated me about it is I agree with the claims. I agree that this is exactly that. My problem with it is I don't blame the consumer of media. I blame the media for shoving it down our throats. And then it distracts. I mean, we've talked about this in the military. What's the distraction? Or I'm sorry, among the veteran community, what's the distraction? Because we always know this was something that was ingrained in us in the armed forces. Like, we're out doing operations in the military and nobody's showing it on the news. Instead, the news is talking about somebody that tripped and fell at the shopping mall today. There is a famous meme or an image that floats around. We may have talked about this last time, but it's from like a talk in Afghanistan or Iraq, and it says, "America's not at war. The Marines are at war. America's at the mall." And it's a perfect illustration of these things. And again, I'm not trying to compare the missing person thing to what's going on in the media among the military. But the problem is that there are important stories, important topics to be covered, but they're cherry picking what needs to be covered and then shoving it down our throats. And then we have to accept that And then everybody starts talking about it. It's like the mainstream sort of, we want you to be concerned with this. We're going to tell you what you should be concerned with. Don't be concerned with the things that are actually concerning, that actually affect all of us. We're talking about right now a potential upcoming recession or depression. You know, that there's going to be a slide here in the economy. We should be talking about that. That's a very important fixture.
Have you heard anything about these shipping container ships that are off the coast?
Off the coast, California. Yeah.
Fort Los Angeles.
Looks like a parking lot off there.
Yeah.
And it's like, that should be front and center in the news. And I'm like, they're used to having 2 maybe in waiting. There's 72 that are waiting. They've had to turn some away.
Yeah, they're months behind at this point.
Speaking of that, one of my friends told me about how a couple of those ships, because they're all lined up, they're being exposed to really bad weather, and they can't get around it because they're not moving. They have to sit and wait. And over the course of the last 6 or 8 months, a few of them have just basically disappeared into the ocean or tipped over their contents. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in contents sitting at the bottom of the ocean now. Not a peep. Not a peep. And you got to ask why. And I don't know if anybody can answer that, but why are we not talking about these things? These impact all of us.
Absolutely does.
I told my wife earlier today to load up on coffee because that's something I don't want to run out of.
I think when coffee runs out,
I can't grow it here. So
yeah, well, when coffee runs out, that's when you got to worry about, you know, it becomes like The Walking Dead, like small armies of people, like factions of people start blocking roads and
looking for that caffeine fix. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
You got to wear the football body armor with the spikes on the shoulder.
Guarding your fuel truck. You have to have a guy with a guitar, like with tons of speakers behind him, blaring the guitar the entire time.
It's the only way to do it. Absolutely, the only way to do it.
Bart, I was out there with this flamethrower.
Flamethrowers,
Yes.
Bart, I wanted to spend the rest of the show kind of talking about what you're doing. You showed us some decals before we went live. You're still with Warrior Reunion, doing reunions for units that were, you know, deployed together, fought together, bringing these individuals that, you know, thankfully, the one plus side that I still see to social media is still being able to be connected to individuals that, you know, 20, 30 years ago would have been much, much harder to do. But still, you know, seeing somebody on, you know, post pictures on Facebook or whatever it is much different than being in that same room, being able to reach out and shake a hand, wrap your arms around somebody, look in their eyes. You know, so let's talk about that a little bit. What units do you got coming up? What are you doing? And if somebody out there that's listening or seeing this, how can they possibly get involved?
Absolutely. So 2020 kind of kicked us in the teeth with having our reunions. We do these reunions for units that served in combat together. We also bring together not just the veterans, but we're bringing together the Gold Star families of the fallen if they had any of those. Pretty original, and it's very healing with that peer-to-peer connection, and we're trying to reestablish those bonds that was formed in combat. So in 2020, we ended up doing some Zoom call type stuff. It was okay, just not my thing really. And then what we were also doing was a more regional type, what we called squad meals. And if we had people in the pipeline or they were going to be coming into the pipeline or had been with us before, we reached out to them and they said, hey, we can't do these full-on reunions for you, but can we do a dinner for you for the night in a more regional setting? So we had these groups of from like 6 to, I think we had one of close to 40 groups of people that got together, and we supported them for a meal for the night, just as a kind of a gap filler. So we went into 2021, you know, unknowing what was going to go on, and we had this spring where we had to. It was still COVID season, and we ended up pushing things into the summer and fall. We've had great success. We've had 2 in Maryland, 2 reunions in Maryland, 1 in Indiana, and 2 in Montana. Actually, I had another one in Michigan, and then we had another one circled back for some Vietnam guys in Indiana that we've been supporting. Here this weekend, we have one for Charlie Company 124 that served in Fallujah, Iraq. When I went from active duty into the reserves, when I switched over to infantry, that is a unit, one of the units I was assigned to, and as a squad leader and then platoon sergeant. So I'm really looking forward to being with these guys. We had, out of the battalion, we had 22 dead, 331 wounded. out of those were wounded bad enough to go home. Some of them we kept with us, and then we had 41 amputees. So out of that, we were the only company that lived in the city the whole time, and we had out of that 22, we had 8 of them. 8 of our guys were killed. Since then, we've lost a few to some accidents and whatnot, but we're going to have their families here, and we're getting together this weekend over Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll leave on Monday, and it's been the first time that this unit's gotten together for a reason that hasn't been for memorial dedication or a funeral.
That's awesome.
So if somebody wants to hop in and support the Warrior Reunion Foundation, easy for me to say, it is warriorreunionfoundation.org. Is that right?
Correct.
People can come in and do right. They can come in and do monetary donations. Is there any other way to support?
Yeah. So if you wish to, you can support us with we have these fundraisers. We'll do 2 hikes a year. We just did one for September 11th. It was very successful. We raised $14,000. But really, we're not making that much money off these hikes as so much as we just want people to participate, get out there, show our brand, and have a reason to get together. And then the word spreads organically from there. It's like guerrilla marketing is what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. We've been pretty successful with it. We could always be more successful. If people wish to, we even have a place on our website where you can donate your vehicle. If you want to donate that, say you have an old junker at home, you can go ahead and donate that to us. Anything helps. Outside of that, we have different locations where you could volunteer with, specifically for if you look at those, you can contact us through our website or through our Facebook, and you can contact us. And we always enjoy having people come and meet up with us for our service projects, which generally we do on a Sunday. Mm-hmm. We have service projects that we do anywhere from, we've helped refab some like a home for wayward boys and girls in Waco, to we've done various Civil War or federal to state cemeteries for veterans. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes it seems like the states seem to kind of, it's not in the front of their brains, with some of this stuff, taking care of things.
Right.
So we just try to, kind of tie it all back together and give back to the community. We're going to be doing some work with a couple different items that are coming up, are some work with some rescue horses and with some equine therapy that help children that, maybe aren't as fortunate as some of us have been, and they have some special needs. So we're going to go in there and have the guys do some service projects. And that's a really good time for other people to join us and to see that these Marines and soldiers, sailors, airmen, hey, they might be missing some parts. They might be burnt. They might be scarred, have some holes in them, but we're not broken. And it's separate from what the media narrative is. We're not broken, and we're still giving back to the community. These guys joined to serve. These guys and gals did, and they're going to still be serving in some way. Oftentimes, we're still serving the community, and this is just a way to show that. And it's also for some of those guys that might have lost track of that. Service heals, and we wish to continue to promote that, among other things.
Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, that is it's fantastic what you've been doing. I'm glad to hear that, we're through that 2020, the Zoom calls, and we're back to more of that in-person feel. Because, especially, what we're doing right now with our video conference we got going, not everybody's super comfortable with this. So that was a great service you guys were putting together, getting people essentially digitally face-to-face. But you never beat. We just had a mutual friend, Matt Hoffman. Hoffman, didn't he go meet up with some buddies?
Yeah.
Nothing like meeting up with guys you haven't seen in years, and it seems like you fall right back into place. Yep. Like a day hasn't passed.
Yep. I need to do one of the. We need to have a Beyond the Wire sponsored reunion.
Beyond the Wire and friends.
And friends.
Yeah.
Of course, somewhere subtle or tame, like Las Vegas or so. I don't know.
Yeah, super tame, super subtle. I love it.
Actually, I have a place that might help, and I'm just gonna shoot this out there. You can look it up if you wish to, real quick. It's
Abu Dhabi.
Howard County Vietnam Veterans Organization. These guys, as Vietnam veterans, put together a organization that they have a reunion at every year. It's called the Reunion. Okay.
Ooh.
And it's pretty neat. I got picked up when I got back from Afghanistan by a guy named Jim. Jim lost his leg and one of his butt cheeks during a Tet offensive there in '68.
Wow.
He got off the medical ship once he got stabilized, and he weighed 87 pounds. Spent 9 months in one of those flippy floppy beds to keep from getting bed sores and stuff. So anyway, he picks me up and he takes me to this thing. It's a bunch of Vietnam guys, really, is what it started off as. And they bought a municipal airport, went for sale, and they lotted it out. And they used the hangars for some hard sites for storage, and then for a like concert venue and stuff. And then the rest of them are for camping sites. And they have a large reunion. There's 10,000 people there.
You know what? When is this?
It was last weekend. Last weekend.
Yeah. So here's the weird thing. Okay, this is the world speaking to me. So I'm getting a deck. My deck is being redone on my house, and the inspector for the county came out the other day. It turns out he's wearing all this devil dog stuff, and so I talked to him because he came out to see if we had started on the construction. I was like, nope, we're not starting yet. And I'm like, you in the Marines? He was 2nd Combat Engineer Battalion, and so we started talking. So we spent, came out to inspect the deck, and actually we ended up speaking for 20 minutes about Marine Corps. But he mentioned this, and that's why I say this is the world talking to me right now. This is somebody's telling me to get there next time. He mentioned this, and as I'm looking it up, I'm like, this is what he was talking about. There's this event, because I was like, what is this event? And he's like, well, go look it up. Well, I forgot to look it up. So this is my reminder. But
the Howard County Vietnam Veterans.
Yeah, it's a couple of hours from me, isn't it? It's a couple of hours from Cincinnati.
So this started. Kokomo is a very blue collar town. It was a big Chrysler town. They've gone through a lot of hits, and these guys still find ways. They come from all over the country to come find each other. It's like walking through parts of history. You'll see the 173rd, Sky Soldiers, and you see 82nd Airborne guys. You see all sorts of MP units, K9 units. I met a tunnel rat there. Wow. You just all sorts of these units. I was with Gulf 2-5. And 2-5 is who Full Metal Jacket, I believe, is based on. And even though that's fiction, but I'm sitting around pieces of history and being able to partake in fireside time, and drinking a few brews with these guys, and they're dying off at the rapid rate.
Right.
And it's sad because there used to be like 15 of them. So I'm sitting around a guy a few years ago. He's a Silver Star recipient. You never know it. Been shot like 3 times. 2 of them were in the face, and he's an M60 gunner, so he's behind the gun, caught rounds. Another one took him in the arms and stuff. So anyway, great experience. It's different. It's not for everybody. It is not a hotel scenario. You can go there and go down the road and get a hotel if you want to, but it's a lot of people doing that peer-to-peer networking, hanging out. They opened this one up. It was all veterans reunion because they're trying to replace those Vietnam guys with your Global War on Terror, your Somalia, your first Gulf War guys. And it's just been really healing. I ran into guys there. We were in the same theater. And I'm like, hey, do you know so-and-so? Oh, yeah. You play the Kevin Bacon game.
Yeah, right.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
Please check it out.
There are probably sponsorship opportunities too, so people can probably throw in a couple bucks, or companies can come in and sponsor, I would assume, and have a banner up or something like that.
Yeah, you could go there and also set up shop. They have a big vendor tent and hard site, and they there was even a mobile tattoo place that was there.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So I'm just saying,
nice
opportunities for everybody.
Yep.
The Howard County Vietnam Vets. I am going to look at that as soon as we get done here, while I'm editing the audio. But yeah, that's a great little nugget there for anybody that lasted this long into the episode. But with that,
well, I want to, before we close this out, I promised to share. We were talking about fashion earlier. I promised to share of a photo of Bart and I all painted up. So this is the kind of stuff that we weren't. This is a grainy old picture taken from a disposable camera at night. So, and you can see somebody's like finger is in the top of the photo too. So somebody got their finger in the top.
It was easy to be a very bad photographer with those things.
Right.
You know where that is? That's when we were going through the Special Operations Training Group, and that's their compound.
Yeah, that's the Delmar Boat Basin or whatever, right? So
see the Sea Wire. That's the like fake camp that they have set up.
Oh yeah,
for our Special Operations Training Group when we go through for our quals.
That's right. Yeah, so we're doing all this cool stuff. You know, this is the kind of stuff like at the time it's terrible and it sucks and you're tired and you're cold because you're up for like 2 days. You're soaking wet and freezing cold. And those Mustang suits, while they helped, you'd still be freezing because it's January or March or something. Southern California, the water's not warm. The water's never warm anyway. But then you're out there in the wintertime and it's 50, 60 degrees at night. So, doing this kind of stuff, I wish I would have been able to attach a helmet cam or some sort of photos. At some point, I'll pull up the picture that I actually took from the side of the boat, and we can all laugh at it. It's so stupid. But
we were pretty high speed there with boonie covers and watch caps,
dude. Yeah. We thought,
really high speed.
But this is before all the new gear got rolled out in the military, like the new era of gear. But we thought we were pretty badass. I mean, I think at the time we were badass in the Marine Corps. Like we were walking into the chow halls with our boots unbloused, and like first sergeants were yelling at us like, "Why aren't your boots bloused?" And we're like, "Because we're special." Yeah.
We were the last generation of Vietnam era gear.
Yeah, old flak jackets and things. Yeah. The other thing I was going to share is we made, this is not the bellhop picture that I proposed because I can't find it right now, but this is from a TV show. And this is real life. Battlestar Galactica and real life. Just to see somebody, whoever came up with this, it is almost the exact same thing.
It just needs the piping around,
right? Right. But that's virtually, it's virtually, the buttons are, down, they're offset, they're down the side. She's wearing a belt here. There's no belt in there. But whoever put this whole thing together had to be watching sci-fi movies all along, and you know it.
Yeah. Somebody took this job because they're like, "Oh my God, the Space Force is great.
Right.
I'm gonna have so much fun with this." And they submitted this. There's no way they're taking this one. They submit it.
I used to work at Centos, and Centos is a uniform company. That's what their primary product is uniform. So you walk into any business and you're wearing uniforms from Centos. But when I first saw these, I was like, it looks like this looks like a Centos product, like something that they designed. And I don't know if they have a military contract like that. It would be super cool if they did. But now they're producing uniforms for the armed forces because that's a very unique uniform. It's not like the other dress uniforms that everybody else has.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah,
it's definitely
different. Anyway.
It's definitely different. Share it. Yep, that was some fun stuff.
If I was a younger man, I might try to go that after the Marine Corps.
Jump into the Space Force.
Yeah.
I mean, Space Marines could be a real thing, right?
Yeah. So. I'll be the door gunner on the space shuttle.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that I always heard, at least they always told us in the Marines, like, you can't go join the Air Force because you're going to be too aggressive and violent. And, they got to tame you down. And the Air Force doesn't want you. And I was always like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's true. But
I think I would be personally upset when I got there and I'm like, I don't get like a taser gun or a laser beam or something. Like,
you gotta get a
phaser. Also, you can show up to the mess hall in the Air Force in your pajamas, because I saw that firsthand at Kadena in Japan, and we had to be in our uniforms, and those guys were showing up in their pajamas on a Tuesday afternoon. So anyway,
hey, I got a book for you guys to read if you want to read a little bit about Space Force stuff.
I got my pen and paper.
Ghost Fleet. And then you've got 2034, just started on that. And I was referenced both of those books by somebody that's very higher up. And they told me that's the future of battle. And obviously it's fiction. Both of these are. But Ghost Fleet.
We've seen fiction come to real life, though, before.
Well, yeah, you just saw that with the uniforms.
Listen, I've also seen Starship Troopers, and Starship Troopers is supposed to be an accurate representation of the future as well.
I'm just waiting to be able to shower with hot chicks.
I forgot about that in the movie.
I took my father to see that movie, and I was a little bit embarrassed because his eyes were like big, and he was twirling his mustache. And, this is nothing like the book.
But here's the thing: that scene from that movie is probably not far off the future of the reality. I mean, with the integrations that are happening in the military, it's just kind of like I mean, when we were in, it was unheard of to have, like, at First Combat Engineer Battalion in the 5th Marines barracks, you wouldn't see women for weeks. You know, there would never be, unless somebody's like wife stopped by the barracks. It just simply wasn't that way, and it's integrating. It's happening every day. I know we're way over time here, so
their former CEO is female. She just left. She's a stud girl.
Yeah.
Woman. Sorry, man.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, Bart Cole dropping some knowledge on us there at the end. Thank
later,
you,
guys.
Bart. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us again, Bart. Always fun to talk to you. You can check us out on all the major social media platforms. We are there. Check us out. Give us a like. Give us a share, rating, review. All of those good things. You can find us on all your major podcast platforms as well. Share the show with a friend. But until next week, we'll be right back here on Beyond the Wire.